Hi, I'm Eric Pratt from US Broadcast Distribution, and today we're going to be talking about the Skaarhoj XC series of control surfaces. And we have the XC3 control surface here. It's an 8-input control surface with program preview, T-bar, and an encoder dials, and some optional buttons across the top. And we're going to get into how to configure them, what you can do with it, and all the other different things that the control surface has that makes it unique. One of the things that sets out the XC line from its predecessors is the LCD displays across above each button and some of the encoder displays. This allows each of the encoder displays to have unique information posted to them that lets you know exactly what each input is doing. So for example, with vMix, each input has a different kind of information to it. So this, for example, is our NDI input. This one over here is replay. These two over here are set up to be our overlays. We've also set up uh, cut and fade, and then we've created a shift button which lets us bring any of the inputs in as overlays. Across the top we've set up some um, of the PTZ Optics settings. So this one here is saturation, and this one here is the different kinds of focus. We've also configured these 6 as presets. So the unit itself doesn't just control one device. In this case, it's controlling a vMix software running on a switchblade splice, as well as controlling our PTZ camera, which we'll get into in a moment. It also has this fancy T-bar to control the speed of dissolve. Just to give you a little demonstration of how the unit works in action, I'm going to walk through some of the different inputs that I've configured this unit for and then go into how we configured them. So the unit itself has been set up so that I can step through my different program buses. So I've got a replay, 3 cameras, one of them coming in via NDI, and then I have an overlay, which I've set up on input 7. I could also bring up different inputs in preview, so I can say what do I want to go to next, and then I can just fade to it. I've also created a few camera presets. So across the top here, I've created 6 camera presets. So you can see these 6 buttons have been set up as presets, and they say camera 1 preset 0 through 5. So here's the 5 different presets. That I've configured just to show you that we can run through a lot of different presets using this. I've also created a shift button. When I hold the shift button down, that's this button over here, I've configured it. All of the inputs change to show me something else. So in this circumstance, the shift button could be set up to access an additional 8 inputs, or in my case, I've set them up to access a different overlays. So I can I can pull up any input as an overlay, as an over-the-shoulder graphic, and then instantly hop back to whatever I want for my preview, and then I can go back in and shift and turn it off. So I've set up an overlay channel here. This is overlay 2, bringing in an NDI graphic from a new Blue Effects running on a different box. But I can also bring up any input as an over-the-shoulder or however I want to set this overlay up. So those are a few of the things that we've done to set up the control surface for this working environment. We also set these encoders. I set this one to be saturation. You can see my saturation getting really high or really low. And then I set this one to be different focus modes, so it will toggle between auto and manual. So those are what we've set this control surface up for, but in order to give you an idea of everything you could possibly set it up for, we need to go into the Skaarhoj website and check out how cores are configured. Now we're going to take a look at how to configure the control surface. And Skaarhoj provides a handy little application called Firmware Updater, and it just says you can click Online Configuration, and it'll take you to their website with your particular whatever unit you have hooked up. So in this case, I have the XC3 hooked up, and I've loaded these two cores to it, and I'm just going to give you a quick browse through the different cores that are available. Where is it? There, add another device. So the list of cores that we can add to the control surface is pretty extensive. AIDA, Atomos, BMD, Hyperdeck, Terranex Mini, Ensemble Designs, Epiphan Pearl, Generic Visca, Lumens, Matrox, NewTek, Panasonic, PTZ Optics, Roland, Sony BRC, Sony Deck Control, and down here at the bottom is vMix. And it says in a note here that it requires the vMix bridge application, which is important to note. The vMix bridge application is a little program that runs that takes all of the TCP/IP information that the controller is sending and turns it into controls for vMix. And this happens extremely quickly, and it's probably the reason why they're able to do Ethernet over UDP so rapidly. Now that we've gone through all the different cores that we can add, we can go back and we can see that we've just added vMix and PTZ Optics, and we can create different configurations. So if you have a different configuration that you want for a different show, or if you want to control different devices in different scenarios. So I have this set up as vMix, but if I wanted to pull up this unit to control an ATEM in a different environment, then I can just swap that core out. Going back to the controller configuration, these are all the different buttons on the unit. So when I was talking about setting up these buttons across the top as presets, you can see, because I've loaded the PTZ Optics core, you can see PTZ Optics is here, vMix is here, and then down at the bottom, these are common to all. These are different system settings. So for the presets, I just set up PTZ Optics preset, camera 1. I could have multiple cameras here. I did a recall and set. So if I press the button, I'm setting it. Press and hold, I'm setting it. Or if I just press it shortly, it's recalling it. And this is preset 1 of a total of 16. And then we use system memory to recall that. Other items of note on this surface, I've set up the program row to be vMix active source. We can, when it's the shift pressed, we can do vMix overlay input, set to overlay 1, input 1. If you look at the next one over, this one does overlay 1, input 2, vMix active source input 2. This one does input 3, and so on and so forth. This row is previews, so it's a different setting, vMix preview source. And then if we look at all the different options, we can turn record on and off, we can control the replay, we can transition, we can go to next event. These are all different control options for controlling vMix. And then we have something like the T-bar. In this set condition, we have it set to transition position, but we could also make it be transition rate or replay speed. Another one that's neat is I had set up this key as shift, but we could set up any button on the control surface as shift. This Skaarhoj has a number of different levels of shift, so we could have 10 different levels of shift, meaning that each button could have 10 different states. in this case, I've had it as hold down, so it's only in that shift mode while it's held down. So while holding that down, we can have this access inputs 9 through 16, or in my case, what I've set it up is overlays, bringing any of those inputs as overlay 1. These two are pretty simple, cut and auto, but we could set up different transitions. And we set up these displays up here to tie into these encoders. These encoders are set up to be different PTZ Optics functions, focus settings, iris, shutter, gain, autofocus sensitivity. There's a whole bunch of options in here that you can use it to dial through, but we could also set this up to control vMix. So if we wanted to go to the next event or transition rate, these are all things that we could tie, and they would be displayed on this display that's above it because that's tied to this encoder. These are all different things that this control surface can do, which this form factor is ideal for live production, having 8 inputs or potentially more using that shift input. One of the really amazing things about the XC line is that it's modular. There's a little tiny port right here. It looks like a serial control port, and that's in fact what it is. And every unit has one of these. So we have over here we have an XC8. This is a replay control surface, and if we pop these together, you can see that this unit lights up, and now we're able to add another unit here which can do replay, or we could add another 8 buttons. There's the XC4 would extend this out to a 16 input, or there's a jog shuttle control, PTZ Op camera joystick. You can build a gigantic control surface just to meet your needs. So if you want, you can create one unit which is the master, and that has the Ethernet control on it, and that becomes the unit which controls all the subsequent units. Or if you buy each unit as a master, then they can function independently, which is handy because if the units are able to function independently, you can set them apart so that a different operator is capable of operating this. So you have a separate replay operator separate from the switcher. So the XC8 here is capable of controlling the replay speed. There's a jog shuttle. We can use it to select cameras, or these 3 buttons here are set up for -4, -6, and -15 to recall the different mark-in points, but we can adjust those using the software just the same way that we were able to adjust the different aspects of the XC3. We can set these different inputs if we wanted to use -5, -10, -15, for example. Or there's these 5 soft buttons, and these right now are configured to select and deselect the different cameras on what's being recorded. Or we can set them up to be any kind of control that we'd want vMix to have. So if we wanted to have control over overlays, for example, we could set these top 4 buttons up as the overlay triggers, or there's a red and a green button here that we could set up to be record or stream. So these are all the different kinds of ideas on ways that these products can solve your live production needs. The XC line, besides being gorgeous, has an enormous amount of functionality to it. So it's capable of doing anything that you can think of for live production with a variety of different hardware. So it's capable of not just working with vMix or PTZ Optics, but any of the cores that are listed on the Skaarhoj website. So we could, for example, set up this row to be controlling an AIDA router, or we can set up this row to control vMix and this row to control an ATEM. The possibilities are endless, and it's all thanks in part to the fact that every single one of these units communicates over an IP, over Ethernet, and can connect to any Ethernet connected device for which they've designed a core for. So that in a nutshell is some of the different features that the XC3 and the XC8 can do. There's many other products in the XC line which make for an amazing combination of control surfaces. And if you use any of the products that Skaarhoj makes cores for, then you should definitely be interested in checking these units out. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Eric at usbroadcast.co, or check out our website, www.usbroadcast.co. Thanks.